There it is, folks, the scoreboard for Algorithm Semifinal Round 2. Looking a little bit different than what we saw
definitely.
yesterday. We did get a couple more submissions, I think, and it looks like now...
Everyone's completed the first one.
Yes, at varying speeds, but let's talk a little bit. I think the most interesting thing that we see here is the score of Tourist right now. Tourist began this competition by opening the 1,000 point question. You might note that score is now, that question is only worth 482 points. It was an aggressive move from Tourist, trying to come out there and get the most points.
I'm wondering, I'm very curious if he looked at RRX earlier in the last competition and realized, hey, maybe I should do that and see how that works out. It seems like he was able to gauge it pretty well, and perhaps thought maybe I don't have time for this. It looks like he bounced over to the 250 point question and was able to solve it pretty rapidly. Not as rapidly as Ikitanic, but enough to land him in third place current.
So
Not as rapidly as Ikitanic, and he's now moved on to the 500 point.
Tourist hasn't solved enough to land him in third place. Essentially abandoned him at this point. You have to wonder if he's going to go back to it right now, or if the others will have a good chance of solving it. It will be interesting to watch, and to give us the insider perspective on everything that's going on right now. We have Scott Wu joining us again for the second year in a row.
See you guys. How's it going?
Applause for Scott here.
Just being hometown fans, really. For the
For
most part. I mean, what?
For those of you who do not know, Scott is one of the finalists in the algorithm competition this year. He competed in last night's semifinal round, coming in second place. Very exciting challenge that catapulted him into the finals.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that first?
Yeah, absolutely.
How did that go?
It was a really tight semifinal, as I'm sure you guys are aware.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that
down
first?
to the challenge phase. A lot of it came down to who was faster on the 250, and just those like tiny little points. The medium and hard problems were really tough on that round, and so a lot of it came down to the difference there. And I ended up in second place, which means that I'll be competing in the final tomorrow night.
And it's your first.
Yeah, it's your
This is
first
my
lead,
first
right?
final, that's
So
right. Yeah. Last year I was in the semis and I wasn't able to make it, but this time made it through.
Very cool. And you were in the fourth place right before the challenge phase, right?
Yeah. It was really
Okay.
tight. I came into it with the understanding that
you were
I
in
had to get forward. Some of the things shifted around because of different
Okay.
I came into it, other people getting challenges. But some of the things shifted around.
What was the strategy of going after the 250 problem instead of the
Absolutely.
the harder problem?
So obviously the 250 was the one that kind of I knew all the ins and outs of because I had been
the most time
myself.
Okay.
And I knew that there were a couple kind of key mistakes that weren't covered by the samples, and those were the main ones that I wanted to check for. Obviously, I think a single submission to the 1,000, you have to think about whether or not that's going to work, whether or not that's going to be fast enough. And so my plan coming into it was I'm going to look at all the 250s as fast as I can because I know that's where everyone's going to be going first. If I find anything, obviously that's great. I'm going to go for it. But if not, then that's when I start to get into the 1,000 and then also the 1,500 submission as well. And I was lucky enough to get a challenge on Kunyovsky's 250. And so after that, I was holding third place, and so kind of from there it was just a matter of holding the fort down.
Awesome.
We watched you. You were checking out some other submissions after that. I think obviously you have to do your due diligence, but I don't think you were.
You didn't want to risk it.
You didn't want to take any chances after seeing what
not
happened.
the same. Exactly. Not the same kind of fire as you did, right? In fourth place, you really
want to
have
risk
to.
it.
You didn't want to take any chances after
Not
Very true. So that was yesterday.
That was yesterday. So there is a competition going on right now. I feel like we have to start talking about it.
We have a very exciting
let
round
me.
right now.
So that was
Let me
yesterday.
pump the scoreboard again, the leaderboard here. So I feel like we have to start talking angle here so you can see it, or you can look up there. So tell us a little bit about what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on here. I got to read all three of the problems, so I know roughly what they're each asking. The 250 is an interesting one about constructing a binary tree that has the right properties. And it's a tricky question, but once you get it, the implementation is pretty tight. So I think that a lot of what we're seeing here with the difference is kind of the time it's taking them to figure out. You know, we see some submissions like, you know, Ivan's submission, Katanic, was extremely fast, right? We saw that coming in the
Super
first
fast. How did
first
that
few minutes.
happen?
Honestly, I don't know. I was still trying to figure out what was going on at that point.
Are there
But,
some problems that are like seem similar
Yeah,
enough
yeah,
that
yeah.
he might have just tried
I don't know.
a strategy on that?
That's
or-
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's
Are
very
there some
tough.
problems
Okay.
that
There's
are
some
like
strategies.
seem
But yeah, I mean,
similar
yeah,
enough
it's
that
one
he
of
might
those
have
problems
just
where it's
tried
kind of
a
it's
strategy
pretty.
on that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, once you get it.
Now, does it,
Yeah, that's. Yeah,
would
go
that
ahead.
make him a target for someone in the challenge phase? Solving it
Very,
so
very
quickly?
possibly. Yeah. And I think when you're in the challenge phase, you have a ton of factors in your head, right? You know, you want to see how fast people are doing it. Maybe being fast means they didn't actually think through all the details, right? Or they're missing some cases. But also, it's kind of, you know, you want to see, is somebody submitting in the last minute at the end of the coding phase? Is somebody resubmitting their code, and so on, right?
Oh.
So far, we just have 250s. So there's you know, not yet 500 or 1,000 submissions to think about, but I think once those come in, that's going to be a big question as well, like we talked about with yesterday's round, as far as which problem to go for first, and a lot of it comes down to, you know, which one you personally have the better cases for and the better preparation.
Right. So it looks like a lot of people are most likely participating on the 500-point question now. What did you gather from that question?
So this one, so this is interesting, and I want to talk a little bit about the kind of the 500 and the 1,000 in relation to each other, because as we saw Gennady Torres, he started on the 1,000, right?
Yeah,
and
he opened that right up.
After a while, he actually jumped over to the 250, and now he's looking at the 500. So it looks like he's put that problem down, and you know, obviously, from our perspective, you know, that's a pretty big sign that the 1,000 is not an easy nut to crack.
Right.
I think that both problems are doable. I've been talking with some of the other contestants from yesterday's semi.
Right.
We have some ideas on both of the problems.
So tell us a little bit of 500 for the viewers who.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 500 is a problem about. So the 500 is about ordering a list of classes that you have in order to maximize the biggest jump in progress from one to the other. And so the idea is that each class gives you some amount of points, which is positive or negative. You want to order all those classes in a way that that you get the biggest jump, you know, from start to finish.
Okay.
And you have some restrictions on what kind of orders you can place. And so it comes down to a lot of factors. You know, I think the contestants have seen a lot of the individual components about kind of having these directed restrictions on graphs and so on. But this particular combination is pretty interesting, and it opens up some new possibilities that haven't been talked about before. I fully expect some submissions to come in by the end of the contest for the 500.
Okay.
I think that from what I saw on the monitors, you know, there are some people who are pretty actively typing it up, and so they're ready to go. Obviously, we have Torres, who just got started on the problem, so we'll see if he's able to get something in time. But that's really going to spice things up, obviously, because right now everyone's kind of right in that, you know, the tiny little range as far as scores, and so the 500 is just going to blow that wide open.
Yeah, it looks like a couple people have pulled the parachute cord on the 500-point question and moved on to the 1,000-point. Do you think that's just because they're the bottom two on the leaderboard right now? You think they're trying to make the biggest moves, and that's what's driving that decision?
I think that's absolutely part of it. Is, you know, you have to be making plays, right? It's the top three make it, and you know, fourth place gets nothing, and that's a big difference. I think another big part of it is that the 500 and the 1,000 actually have very different styles, if that makes sense. So the 500 is very kind of like graph theory involved problem, whereas the 1,000 is more mathy. It's a lot more about kind of figuring out combinations, and you know, I think different people's styles suit them to different problems. It looks like Katanic is he's sticking with the 500. BCIP, it looks like, has jumped over to the 1,000, and then obviously we have Torres, who started with the 1,000 and is now jumping ship. So yeah, I mean, I think that's going to shape that, and I'm sure the other contestants are thinking about that as well, seeing who's working on what problem. And it makes a huge difference whether you're in, you know, Katanic, for example, he has that safety net, right, which is that as long as he passes the 250, you know, there's going to have to be a lot of submissions and harder problems coming in to kick him off that spot.
True.
And so that makes a big difference. Yeah.
So getting that 250 at a high point, is is very advantageous in a competition such as this.
Yeah, and if you look at, for example, second and third place, right, BCIP and Taurus, they're 1 point away, right? But that 1 point can make the difference, right, between qualifying and not qualifying, and often it does. And so you're thinking about these like 20-second, 30-second differences that end up deciding who makes the finals and who goes home. Yeah, we'll have to see what happens in the last 30 minutes.
Basically, as of right now, everyone's locked in scores just about is in range of a challenge swinging things one way or another. So nothing's safe at this point for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Even, I mean, if I'm Nika, obviously it's not the best position to be in, but there's 100 different ways he can make it to the top, right? If we see failures on the 250, obviously if he comes in with a submission on either of these two harder problems, or if he does well in the challenge phase, any of those will potentially get him up there.
So you said you were able to see the 1,000-point problem as well. What are they looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 1,000-point problem is it's about placing poles on a chessboard, and this one also has a really tight set of constraints. So there's a lot of different things that you have to maintain, and you're looking to just find one correct placing of the poles that satisfies every single condition. Some of the conditions are like, this pole has to be on this color, black or white, square on the chessboard. Some of the conditions are like, these two poles have to be at most this distance apart, and some of the conditions are like, this pole has to be within these couple coordinates.
Wow.
It's
that
a lot of
sounds
things.
super complicated.
And each individual condition obviously, sounds simple enough, but kind of finding ways to do that all together is tough. And additionally, there are some cases where there is no solution, and in that case you have to say that there is none. And so there's a lot to figure out there. I'm not too sure myself what exactly the right approaches are. I think there are some ideas. It looks like BCIP has started coding. I don't know if we can pull up his...
Yeah, we had him a moment ago. I've been slowly scrolling through everyone's screens. It looks like there's a lot of notepad work going on right now.
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
scratching things down. So we'll switch it over and get over to BCIP again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, right now there's around 30 minutes left in the coding phase. And so we're
Plenty
not
of time.
quite getting to the point where it's kind of, you have to pull out the light speed typing. I think definitely a lot of the contestants are still working out things on paper. It looks like BCIP has some concrete ideas. There's a lot that's been fleshed out already. I don't know if maybe he has the full approach and it's a matter of whether he can do the implementation in time, or if he's got, if he knows what the first couple steps are and he wants to get those out of the way and then think more. So
what do you think? Doable? Are we going to get any 500 or 1,000-point submissions in 27 minutes?
I absolutely think we're going to get 500 submissions in the next 20 minutes in the time that we have left. 1,000, I'm not as sure about. It looks like BCIP is the main person working on it.
Okay.
QWERTY, it seems like Nika are also putting some effort. So we're pretty evenly split between the two problems as far as what the contestants are working on. It would not surprise me at all to see submissions on either of the problems. It'll come down to what these contestants are able to figure out.
All right. I think this is a great opportunity for any of our viewers who may not be familiar with the format of a single round match to talk them through how this all works. I know we've talked a lot about 250 and 500 point and 1,000 point questions. If you're with us and you're not familiar with that, let us please just take a moment to explain how everything's formatted here. So there are 3 problems of varying levels of difficulty. The 250 point being the easiest, 500 being a mid-tier, and 1,000 being the most difficult problem. Keep in mind, we are at the finals, so these are more challenging than the average time SRM questions.
Yes.
So as soon as someone opens up the problem and views the problem statement, the timer starts for that particular problem. If you're watching us on the stream right now, you can see that in the 500-point column, everything is slowly ticking down. That is because the longer it takes you to solve the problem, the fewer points it is worth. Once you submit your code to that problem, your score is locked in at that time. If you find an issue in your code, you can always resubmit and take the lower score. The timer does keep going in the background, but you can lock it in as soon as you submit your code to it.
Now, submitting doesn't necessarily mean you get those points either.
Oh, not even close. That's just the first step in the process. So there is a 90-minute coding phase that kicks off the challenge. And then we take a 5-minute breather. Everyone catches their breath, and we go into the most exciting part of the algorithm competition, I'm sure Scott can attest to that. The challenge phase. In the challenge phase of the SRM, everyone's submission become available to view. So if you are tourist, you could go look at Nika's submission and look for an issue. What you're trying to do is find a test case that you can submit that will force their code to either not provide a response, or provide an invalid response. Or incorrect response. Unexpected is probably the word that works best in that one. But basically, you want to find the bug and you want to expose it. If you are able to do so successfully, you earn 50 points, and the person who is challenged loses all points on that question. If you throw a challenge out there and the code holds up and your challenge is rejected, you lose 25 points. So you do have to wager. When you look at the way scores are locked in right now, losing a challenge could
make the difference.
Yeah, it could knock someone right out of the top 3. The final phase after the challenge phase goes on is the system test. This is where we run thousands of test cases. We make sure that this code really truly works. If your code does not pass system tests, you lose those points anyways. Right. So theoretically, there could even be scenarios where everyone fails system testing, but one person makes a challenge and wins those challenge points. The only guaranteed points are challenge points.
Yeah, and that one doesn't happen too often.
No.
But it could happen. You're absolutely
Theoretically.
right. And so the algorithm contest is designed to test all these different aspects of building and implementing different algorithms, right? There's the part of solving the problems, figuring out what the right approaches are. Then there's the part of actually really implementing that and putting kind of the thoughts in your head into real code. And then, like you said, with the challenge phase, which can be especially nerve-wracking, a lot of that is about really being able to dissect other people's code and being able to kind of see at a glance what are people doing, what might they have missed, what might they not be thinking about. And then finally, obviously, the attention to detail, with passing the system tests, is really kind of what makes or breaks it at the end of the day. So a lot of skills being tested here. 23 minutes to go.
Yeah, we've moved back over to take a look at what BCIP is doing. Looks like he's still cranking out on code. He might be the only one who's actively coding at the moment. Can anyone? I see a couple other screens that have some action going on. So let's take a tour around the competitors and see what everyone's up to.
Yeah.
All right. So next, actually, I don't even think we have. This screen has made an appearance on our stream yet, and that would be criminal if I didn't get him in there. QWERTY787788.
That's always fun to say on the webcam.
Yes, we will refer to him as QWERTY from now on.
Looks like he's looking at the last problem.
So, yes, is this the 1,000-pointer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, digesting, I would imagine he's scribbling away on his notepad right now, trying to figure out that solution.
Right.
All right, let's jump over to...
So, I have a question for Scott. So, how important is it to, I guess, run your own test cases? Do you even have time to do that? Is it necessary to do?
And so, that part that you just talked about, like whether or not to run your own test cases, that's a whole decision itself, and that's part of the strategy too.
Okay.
Sometimes, if you feel like, if you feel like you've done the best that you can, or that you need that time to move on to the later problems, it's important to just kind of submit it, get it out there, and get it quickly, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's better to test, and a lot of it comes down to how confident are you? How confident are you that your solution is going to pass? How confident are you that the sample cases that are given are going to be good enough to test all the possibilities? Because often they aren't, right? And I mean, I think even within this contest, I think we've seen different strategies. I know Ivan Katanich, he spent some time, even after he submitted the 250, he spent some time looking into it just to make sure it was right.
Okay.
That's usually, I think, a good sign just to make sure that he's being cautious. And I think often when you are in the first place, you kind of have the luxury of taking that time to do that. But often it comes down to what the best use of time is. And I think one very real possibility here is in the last 20 minutes, if we have some contestants who aren't able to make progress on the 500, who aren't able to make progress on the 1000, if they know that they're not going to get their solutions in time, what they'll do instead often is that they'll just look into the 250, first of all, to check whether their code is correct, right? Maybe stress test it, maybe kind of look at the examples and make sure they have everything kind of as they want it to be. Mm-hmm. And second of all, obviously to prepare challenges, right? Thinking about, what mistakes could other people have made? Or maybe, what's a mistake that I made that I was able to catch myself doing?
Right.
And now let's see if anyone else has that too. So, would not be surprising at all to see people coming back to the 250. I think we just looked at Cordy's screen. We're looking at Nika's screen now. And we're seeing some people who are working on the harder problems, and we're seeing some people who are still thinking. Obviously you need that thinking time to figure out what you're doing. But if we start coming down to only 15 minutes, 10 minutes left, there's going to be a real question of whether people are going to be able to type their solutions in time, even if they do figure out the problem. Right.
Okay.
At what point do you think they hit the eject button and say that I'm probably not going to get a valid submission in time, and I just need to start preparing for the challenge rounds?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're around 10 minutes away, and, if you haven't started coding, obviously if you're 90% of the way there, you have some bug. That's probably the biggest priority to figure out what's going on, right? But if you're 10, 15 minutes out, you don't have anything started yet. Maybe you have figured out the solution, but you haven't gotten that started. It's often a better idea to think about going back to the 250, making sure everything's correct, or thinking about challenges. Because like we said, the differences here are very small, and like the 25 points, the 50 points, that will make the difference between qualifying and not qualifying for the finals tomorrow.
The leaderboard is telling an interesting story right now. There are some hidden storylines going on here, in addition to just solving these problems. Currently sitting in third place is Taurus. Taurus is a former TCO champion. Last year did not make it to the finals.
That's
it was
right.
Quite the upset. I remember
Right.
hearing a lot of noise in the room when
That's right.
he didn't get there. So Taurus right now, right on the bubble.
Yeah.
What do you think's going through his head right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to talk a little bit more about Taurus Gennady, he is the favorite, or the top 2 or 3 favorites at any programming competition that he goes to, really. And he has a name for himself, and he has a legacy, right? And last year when we saw him not even make it out of the semifinals, much less kind of placing well in the finals, that was a huge surprise, and it was a huge upset. And I think he's been thinking about that as well. We saw him try out a new strategy here with the 1000 today.
Is this new? Is this not typical of him?
I think that he usually plays it kind of run of the mill,
Okay.
Which to me that makes sense. If he's Taurus, he can play the orthodox strategies and kind of keep up with the competitors and just do what they do better, right? But he definitely tried out something different. And in this particular case, I don't think it panned out, because it looks like he's not working on the 1000. But obviously that happens sometimes. Every strategy has ups and downs. And it seems like his adaptation is going well so far. He's still on track to make it. That could change with one challenge. That could change with one submission.
Taurus has started coding. Sorry to interrupt you there, Scott.
And is he coding?
Yeah, he started migrating his code into the arena.
Okay.
So we might see
Yeah, and
Taurus
this
running
is
some
the
tests
500,
soon.
and that would not surprise me at all. I think
Wow.
a submission on the 500. It looks like he's close.
Looks like that old DOS screen that you used to
Yeah.
see. Wow.
Yeah. Gennady has a very, he has everything kind of down to the T as far as his setup. And so he only uses his own machine. He has all the tools that he exactly wants to have there.
You mentioned earlier about potentially reopening a problem.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Because what if I have my code in my IDE, which I copy over to the arena? Can't I just test the code on my IDE and come back to it, open it, and then submit real quick fast?
Yeah, no, so you absolutely can test it locally. You can do whatever you want on your own IDE. The timer is still running from the very first time you open that problem. It runs even if you're not on that problem. So for example here, we saw Gennady on the 1000, and then now he's moved to the 250 and 500. His points are still going down on the 1000 as we speak.
Correct.
Right?
But I guess my question was more on, all right, Taurus has submitted 231. What if he wants to go back in and make a change?
Yeah, and if he wants to resubmit that, he's going to have to suffer the penalty from the very first time that he opened that 250.
Oh, so
and
it's
going to go all the way
technically
back.
still counting in the background?
Yeah, exactly. It's still going
see.
down.
Okay.
Obviously, if he doesn't touch it, it's going to stay at 231.
But at this point,
but
it might be around 100 or something.
At this point, if he
So-
resubmits, it would
I
not
see.
surprise me to see him jump below
Okay.
6th place. Yeah. And that's better than getting 0 if your code is wrong, right? Sometimes you have
That's
to fix
true.
it.
Yeah.
But obviously, the best route is to get it right the first time around.
Right. I do see in the chat, Anaket204 commenting Taurus is here. Wow. But having a question about the points. Hopefully, the explanation that we just walked through answered that for you. But just to be clear, the points on the leaderboard begin dropping for any question as soon as the competitor opens it. So the longer it takes you to solve a problem, the fewer points your solution is worth. So speed is incentivized in single round match format.
Exactly, and the light blue points that we are seeing on all the 250s, that means that the competitors have already submit their solutions. They can choose to resubmit, but for now they've locked it in and they've said, this is what I want to be kind of writing on at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's why those points are locked in. The italics points on the right for the harder problems, that means that they haven't submit yet, but when they do, they're going to get the points that shows up on the screen. And that's still kind of to be determined whether that will pass system tests.
Right. So yeah, you can punch your ticket early on, but there's no guarantee you're getting to your destination unless you pass the tests.
Absolutely.
And question for you as a competitor developer, I see a lot of variable names just being one letter. Typically, not something you see in actual development code.
Well, let's be careful with our use of the word.
Oh
actual
yeah, I'm sorry.
I would say it's a little different than functional
is that for
development.
So it's
speed?
a very,
is it for what is it?
And so I think different competitors have different styles.
Okay.
One thing worth keeping in mind is that English is not a lot of these competitors' first language.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of that makes a big difference. I personally lean towards longer variable names.
Okay.
Right? I think when you're reading your code, when you're trying to figure out what's going on, it helps a lot to have those. One of my my coaches a long time ago once said, typing is never the bottleneck, right? As in, if you had somebody's solution in front of you and you just wanted to retype it, it would only take you like 3 or 4 minutes, right? If you just had everything that you wanted to type. What's really tough is, obviously solving the problem, but also figuring out all the details. Should this be an n-1 or an n? Should I start from the bottom or the top of the loop? What should I do there, right? And, I try to keep that to heart, and I think a lot of what that means is writing clear code when possible. But yeah, I think a lot of people do it for comfort reasons. A lot of people do it kind of to improve the speed, and to do it faster.
Is there anybody who does it to kind of mess with people in the challenge round?
Yeah, that's
I've always was curious about that.
That's its own tactic, and we actually
is that used? Like, does anyone do that, or
I think
few
it's
people
maybe a few people.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
there
interesting.
was a joke yesterday because something kind of like that happened.
Oh, wow.
Or not intentionally or anything, but where RNG was in third place and X-Ray was in fourth, right? And the reason that it was that way, not the other way around, because X-Ray actually did jump in front of RNG for a little while, is because X-Ray actually had a failed challenge on RNG's solution, on Makoto's solution, right? And
why was that?
It was kind of interesting because it was a little bit of a battle between those third and fourth place finishers, right? To see who would come out on top, and it did come down to kind of X-Ray having a wrong challenge. That minus 25 made the difference, right? And so obviously that's something to think about. I've seen people do it before. I think often, kind of in the moment when you're at the finals, it's hard to, to weigh that in when you have so many other things to be thinking about with solving the problems themselves.
Right.
But yeah, I think, it does happen unintentionally often that you'll misread somebody else's solution, and that'll cause you to miss a challenge that you could get, or to make a challenge that you, that wasn't quite right, but you thought you had.
Exactly. And it looks like everyone's in the 200 range, between 200 and 300 for the 500-point question.
Yeah, and we're really, really starting to get towards crunch time now. 12 minutes left. It's coming down to, I think at this point, if you haven't started coding, if you don't already have the ideas in your head, it's going to be really, really, really tough to get a working solution out in time. It looks like Katanich is starting something on the 500 problem.
Yeah.
One thing, see it's passed a couple tests on the right-hand side. I don't know if those are his local tests or those are arena tests, but he's making some good progress.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that's worth noting, I think, is that both him and Umnik, who's currently in fourth place, neither of them have even opened the 1,000-point problem, right? And so, I don't think that they've quite given up on the 500 yet. It still seems like they both kind of have something that they want to push for.
Do you ever find the sunk cost fallacy surfacing up
Yeah,
in these competitions?
It's,
like,
I
I
mean,
put
it's
so much time on this problem,
absolutely,
and then
especially
sabotages
in the heat of the moment, right? Because there's all the nerves, there's all the tournament pressure, and then there's all the eyes on you.
Right.
And it's really easy to kind of like to make those mistakes. I've dealt with it. I think every every contestant has had to deal with it a lot.
All right, let's tune back in and see what Tourist is up to. Still cranking away. Looks like I think that must be his monitor on the other side of the bank over here, where we see some people lining up.
Looks like RNG's very
RNG58, very interested in what's going on there. And if you're interested in the view from the top coder arena, here you're going to see it's camera's a little blocked, but we do have people gathered around the monitor banks here.
Yep.
Everyone watching what's going on.
We see a lot of people actually from yesterday's semi who came by to watch. I see X-Ray and Kunyaski in the picture.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, I think for Taurus especially, this one is big with the 1000. If he does get it in, and he does get it passing, it's looking like he's going to be very solidly safe as far as making it to the finals. If not, he's still in the third place spot right now, but like we talked about, that could change very, very easily. It could change with a touch of a button. So.
All right, I see some more people coming in. We've been climbing up. We've gotten the 70s, and we're at around 80 on Facebook.
Oh,
Scott Wu, I feel like, always brings the viewers.
Yeah, he puts butts in seats. Scott, you got a gift for this. We're up over 100 on Twitch.
So for those who are maybe just joining us, we are here with Scott Wu. He competed yesterday in the semifinal round 1. He has made it to the next round, so we will be seeing him competing in the finals tomorrow.
All right, what do we have going on here? It looks like
some testing going on.
Looks like we have some testing going on. Scott, you can check out over here if you want the more real-time feed without the delay.
And we have a submission from Ika Tonic. It looks like he has submitted with a potential of 199.73 points.
All right, let's pop over and see what's going on there.
Yeah, and that's really exciting, obviously, because it keeps him in first place, but it also makes it much, much harder for anyone to surpass that lead, right? Now, a single challenge isn't going to be enough to make that difference. So if he can hold on to this, he has some very solid points.
Assuming, of course, that his code is ironclad.
Exactly. There's so many things that can happen, and like we talked about, the 500 has a lot of different details. So we'll see what happens. It looks like right now he's stress testing it.
Okay.
I think he just wants to do as best as he can to make sure it's absolutely correct, which seems like the right way to use his last 8 and 9 minutes. And
I don't even think he will open up the 1,000 point question before the end of the competition.
Most likely not.
With the way scores are looking right now on the 1,000 points questions, I don't think anyone's going to be submitting, so you're not going to have to be prepared to challenge him.
And I obviously, if he does open it, it's not going to be trying to solve that problem the last 8 minutes. It's more going to be kind of looking to understand that problem to see in case he does need to make a challenge there. Say Taurus submits, or say Qwerty submits, or Nika. He's going to have to think about making a challenge if he does end up in that spot. So,
actually, can we move on over to Nika? I'd like to see. He is in last place, but I feel like he's had a lot of time to mull over the 500-point question. He's got a lot of available points left for him, and if he can pull that off, I think he could bump himself all the way up to second place.
He's coding. He could be getting close. Trying to sort out his interface here, see if he's got any tests so we can kind of sneak up and see. But
yeah, it looks like he has something. It looks like it is functional. It seems like he might have 1 or 2 bugs that he's trying to figure out. It looks like he's been running the sample test to see what's going on there.
I see.
That one could definitely come down to the wire. And like you said, if that submission does go through, he could easily jump to second place, maybe even first place, depending on how Ivan's submissions do.
Let's give a quick scoreboard view so you can see how the scoreboard has changed with Ika Tonic submitting to the 500-point question here. Scott, what do you see when you look at this leaderboard right now? Who should we be watching in the next few minutes?
So Taurus, absolutely. I think you can never really count him out. It would not surprise me at all. We see a big submission on the 1,000 in the next 5 or 6 minutes, or on the 500. Umnik as well. Like we said, has really been kind of heads down with the 500. It looks like he's, he has not given up yet. I think he thinks he still has something there for the next 6 minutes. And then, especially Qwerty and Nika obviously are going to be thinking about what moves they can make. Nika more so than Qwerty, because I think, Qwerty is really at that spot where 1 challenge is enough to make it through. Nika right now, it's looking like he might need more than that. He's gonna most likely need the 500-point problem. anything could change, but I think he's thinking right now that he has to get something in for the 500. And from what we saw on his screen, it looks like he very well might be close.
Yeah, Torres running a few tests right there as we take a look in at him. Scott did mention the work being done right now by Umnick. I do want to apologize. We had a couple technical difficulties. Could not get a feed of Umnick's screen. So if you're watching from home rooting for Umnick, wondering why he's not there, we apologize. But we'll definitely keep you apprised of what's going on.
And can we take a look at BCIP's screen, actually?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I haven't done that in a while, I feel like.
I know he was looking at the 1000. Oh, a submission from Torres.
Okay,
as soon
something that
as
we had
bounced
expected.
away, huh?
That's how it always happens.
All right, really quick,
Torres.
we're on
Very
BCIP, but
nice.
right now let's see how that affects the leaderboard. Boom, Torres on top. I don't think
Torres
that would have surprised
had
anyone.
completed that a little faster than Ikatanich right there, so
Yeah, and that's interesting because Torres actually started on the 1000, right?
Right, that's true.
And so it looks like he's made the right decision to move off of that and to do the other problems instead. He's been able to squeeze it in just with 5 minutes left. So far looking good for him. It's going to be very tough for other people to surpass his count right now.
I think when you have the pedigree that that Torres has, you can play it fast and loose like that. And still feel
Exactly.
confident.
And I think absolutely that's what he's been trying to do is to kind of get as many rolls of the die as possible, essentially.
and at this point, is he just going to go back through his code, make sure it's ironclad?
Yeah, I think so. Whether that's the 250 or the 500, I'm not too sure. I would guess the 500. It looks like that one has a lot more potential for failing. It has a lot more details.
But even if he
very
holds on to
possible.
that 231, I think he still has a good chance if
Yeah,
none of
absolutely.
the other
I think-
250s.
Or if he, for example, if he passes the 500 and loses the 250, that could work as well. So far, it's looking like he's got a very good chance of being in the top three. Still left to see, whether BCIP is going to make a submission, whether Nika's going to get his 500 in, Cordy and Umnick as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting, especially with Umnick and QWERTY, if they're able to submit,
Yeah, and I'm
knocking
expecting-
BCIP out of that third place spot.
Exactly, and not only does that knock BCIP out, but it also makes it a lot tighter on Torres and Ikatanich, right? Because
Right.
they're not quite as much sitting pretty, and they have to be very careful to not fail either of
Sure.
their pumps. So I expect that we'll see another submission in the next 3 minutes. We'll have to see what
Correct.
happens.
Yeah, we have just under
Back-
3.5.
Back to the leaderboard. Torres sitting on top, Ikatanich sitting in second place, BCIP in third with a very tenuous grasp on that position with Umnick right behind him. The challenge phase could change everything super quickly here. Did have a question come in from the chat.
Yeah.
So it's about the languages. So the question was, what language does Torres use? And then what about Scott? What do you like to program with? And then do you know
Sure,
what RNG
sure.
58 uses?
So usually in contests, most of us use C++, and the reason that we do is because it's the most bare bones efficient, right? It's going to be able to do the most computations per time, and it really gives you the most control over what you want to do. I think some coders use Java as well. I think QWERTY is partial to Java out of the contestants here. And I think, typically you see one of these two just because they're so fast. I think in years prior we had Pascal even.
Wow.
Which obviously is very clunky to work with, but it kind of
Interesting.
it's efficient once you actually write out the programs.
Okay. Yeah, I think we got a
other than
thumbs
that,
up
I think
for
those are the-
Pascal. or we could be on a delay. Who knows?
Those are I think are the big three usually in programming contests. Recently we have seen more with Python. I've heard of people who even use like MATLAB or R, these other
wow.
languages. Actually, I've seen someone do a contest in Microsoft Excel at some point. It was the most ridiculous thing, but they made it work somehow.
All right, 1 minute and 52 seconds remain in the coding phase of this competition. Looking at the leaderboard, Scott, who do you think we should be watching this last
2
minute
minutes
and a half?
left. 4 people
I would
who
say Umnick or
might make a
BCIP.
submission. Yeah, absolutely. I think BCIP is a very strong contender.
All right, let's go take a look, see what BCIP is seeing right now. So code has been migrated over to the arena.
Oh, it looks like he's gonna make a push.
Back into his IDE though. Looks like sorting. I'm guessing he's hunting down some straggling bugs, based on what we see right here.
1 minute left. So after this 1 minute, we'll be going into the intermission phase. Take a 5-minute breather. The contestants will have time to prepare whatever they'd like, and then we'll jump into the challenge phase, which will be 10 minutes of the contestants looking at each other's programs. And during the challenge phase, we'll really get to see kind of a lot of action going on. Everyone's going to be trying to read everyone else's programs, trying to figure out if they have any bugs, if they missed any cases, if they have any kind of mistake. And those points may very well determine who makes it to the finals tomorrow and who does not.
Yeah, so we are down to 40 seconds remaining in the phase. Still no submission. BCIP isn't doing anything at the moment. I'm guessing that means that...
Is he looking at his notepad? Oh, here we go.
The mouse is moving again. I never thought I'd sit here and say, the mouse is moving again.
Now he's looking.
30 seconds left.
Yeah, he's probably checking the scoreboard. We're down to 20
BCIP is compiling
seconds.
the 1,000-point problem we see here. Is he going after the 1,000?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that would change the landscape significantly.
Doesn't look like he's going to get it in the last 8 seconds. Looks like he's holding back. I think.
All right, we're going to switch to the scoreboard as we close in on the final seconds. No submissions in before the deadline.
All right.
All right.
So here we go.
We are now at a 5-minute intermission.
So for the
Torres sitting on
contestants,
top.
this is a really interesting spot because you have 5 minutes.
Okay.
But it's not like it's a free 5 minutes to sit. And
Yeah, what do you
whatever
do
want.
actually at this
A
point?
lot of it comes down to really figuring out your strategy, right? And also, preparing the data, preparing the cases. If you need to write code to generate the cases that you want to test, then you have to do that. And I think there's a lot of factors. We talked about some of the different factors before, as far as looking at how fast people submit, looking at whether they've had to resubmit or if they submit right before the end of the contest. I think another factor that's big, obviously, is each personal contestant's history. And so if you ask each of these contestants, what do you know about Taurus? What do you know about BCIP? What do you know about Katanich, right? I think all of them will kind of have a little mental dossier. They'll have something that's like, they're really solid if they submit the 250. Sometimes they're going to submit a 1,000 that's we're not as certain is going to pass, or something like that.
Right.
Or they'll know something like, this person often misses this kind of case, or they make this kind of bug, right? And you have to think about that while you're looking for the programs, because the first person to get a challenge, so if you are able to challenge somebody else's code to find that they have a bug, that person gets a 0 on their problem, but also they cannot be challenged again by anyone else. So only one person can claim that 50 points.
Wow.
And what that means is right out of the gate, 3 minutes from now, if you get a challenge 10 seconds in, no one else can get that, and you have those 50 points locked in, right? And so a lot of it comes down to speed, and often it comes down to who you decide to look at first, right? Looking at Umnick's 250 versus looking at Taurus's 500 could make the difference.
Oh, wow.
Especially if a lot of people kind of, let's say somebody puts in a submission right in the last minute, last 30 seconds, right? That's obviously going to look very suspect, especially if it's for a problem like the 1,000 that nobody else has. And it could very well be the case that, you're going to have 3 or 4 people who are just looking at that problem at the same time, and it's going to be a race, if there is a bug, to figure out what's going on.
Absolutely. And I feel, would you, for you personally, who would you go after first? Would you go after
Yeah, it's an
Ikatanich
interesting
because
question.
he finished it so fast? I feel like a lot of people are also pretty well versed in the 500-point question because a lot of people spend a lot of time there.
So everyone has opened the 500. I'm sure they've all thought about it at least a good bit.
Yeah.
My guess, at least for the 2 questions, I would guess that the 500 is a little bit trickier, and it's going to be a little bit easier to get challenges there and also to fail the system tests. So, seeing Katanich's 500 or Taurus's 500, seeing either of them go down wouldn't be too surprising to me. The 250, I think, was a lot more bread and butter once you did figure out, like we talked about, that it's not an easy problem to solve by any means, but once you have the solution in your head, really putting that into paper and making that work and kind of getting the code out, is mostly straightforward from there. And that's why we've seen some people like Katanich that got 241, and then we have some people at 120.
So during these 5 minutes, do you think they might be revisiting the problem to refresh their mind real quick?
Yeah,
how...
They may want to read through the problems themselves. It helps a lot to know all the exact constraints, right? This is up to 100, this is up to 1,000. What cases you can and can't make, and often a lot of them will you'll be writing your own programs on the side, not to solve the problem, but to actually generate a case that is bad for them. for other
Interesting.
people's programs. So there's a lot of other strategies here. I think it's very possible that we may even see people kind of planning to stress test other people's solutions during the challenge phase. And so the way that works is you make a checker and a tester, and you compare it against your solution. So you make something that generates all these random cases, runs your program and their program, right?
I didn't
and
know
then
that part. That's
sees
pretty interesting.
when you match and when you don't match, right?
Yeah.
And obviously you have to have that confidence in your own solution that, if you guys don't match, then that's a sign that you need to be challenging them.
So
30 seconds left. And,
I won't ask you to reveal your scouting reports. I mean, you're competing tomorrow against the top
That's
three
true.
who
Yep.
finish here. But is there anyone you think we should be looking out for? Maybe tune into first as we enter the challenge phase?
Yeah, and so I
over
think,
20 seconds?
like you guys mentioned, Katanich is going to be, I think, a big target for multiple reasons. First of all, because he's one of the two people that has that 500-point submission, and because he had such a fast 250, right?
Okay.
And it would not surprise me at all to see multiple people looking at Katanich's solutions. I think everyone's familiar enough with the 500 at this point to understand what people are doing. So it's possible we may see a quick challenge there. Also
Challenge
possible
phase is on already.
Right.
Let's jump in. What's Taurus taking a look at? He went straight after Katanich's 250-point problem,
All right.
just as
Called
Scott
it.
predicted.
All right.
So this one is interesting. I didn't get to look at the sample cases, but it's I think the inputs are a lot smaller. There's only a single integer n. It's from 1 to 100, which means that you can't expect, there's not that many cases which are going to be kind of totally out of the blue, right? You want to make sure you handle the 1 to 99 and 100, right? But I imagine that...
From what I understand, it is 1 to n actually. So it's basically a tree, and then
Yep.
the values have to be a certain distance. So if
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
a 1,
And
it
you
would be
provide-
1 away. If
That's
it was
right.
2, they'd have to be 2 away.
So the idea is you're given a tree, or
Right.
sorry, you're given an integer, n, and you have to build a tree of size 2n that satisfies certain properties. What are we seeing from Taurus?
All right. Taurus still digging through. Oh, he's
Looks
close
like
to
he's moved on.
250-point problem. He's now going after BCIP's
Oh, he seems-
250
And it looks like he's just going straight down. Actually, it looks like he's ordered it by how fast they've solved the 250.
We'll give him a moment here.
I think internally Taurus is thinking, there's no way somebody could have gotten this problem faster than me. Right? And so he's looking at the two people, Katanich and BCIP, that have the faster submissions, and he's trying to see what they're up to. Looks like he was satisfied with Katanich, though, because he moved on to the next one.
Okay. Wow.
That's a good sign, I think, for Katanich, for Ivan.
Yeah. Now he's
that,
on to Umnix.
that he's safe.
So yeah, continuing to go in order of points scored on the 250-point question. Hasn't taken a look at the 500-point question yet from Katanich.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see Umnik or BCIP as they are right on the bubble.
Right, they're right on the bubble.
Right,
So
let's
they
go
would love
look in
to.
at BCIP. As
And
mentioned
we
earlier, we don't have a feed from Umnik, so he's
Oh, that's right.
flying under the radar as far as we're concerned on the broadcast right now, but obviously we'll keep you informed if anything happens on the scoreboard.
And we still have a good 8 minutes to go, but obviously towards the end of that, like you guys said, if you are Cordy or if you are Umnik, you're going to be thinking about having to make some moves in this spot. And I think it's very possible that we'll see a blind challenge tossed out towards the end. You have no idea whether or not it's going to work or not work, but it's better than sitting and taking your guaranteed 5th place.
That's how this format does work right now. The top 3 advance to the finals, where they will be taking on Scott Wu.
Scott Wu and 2 others, in fact.
RNG and-
You're the one here. RNG 58 is in there as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, the
And,
top 6 contestants are going to be facing off in the
XUDYH.
final
CDYH,
tomorrow
yes.
evening. I think yesterday there weren't too many upsets, I want to say, as far as rating-wise. Actually, the 3 of us who qualified were the top 3 by rating.
Yes.
But
you made it interesting.
Which, yeah, it was a very exciting challenge phase, and then it ended up kind
Right.
of a little bit.
Oh,
bread
it
and
looks like
butter.
someone has defended.
Oh, we
Nika
do have a
has defended.
successful defense.
Do we know who
So
put in
Cordy
the-
has
okay.
Yes.
attacked
And so
Nika.
exactly, and so that's what we were talking about. Cordy sitting in 5th place wanted to kind of push forward.
He's
and
trying to
a
make
move.
moves here.
Yeah.
So you have to be aggressive, because it doesn't really matter if you're in 4th or 6th.
Yeah.
Right.
You need to break that top 3. So QWERTY making that challenge on Nika. Nika withstanding the assault.
So it looks like a lot of people's 250-point question is pretty solid.
Yeah, it looks like they're holding up. Nothing obvious being caught so far. And I think, if you're Umnik or if you're BCIP, you have to be thinking a couple things, right? The first one is, hey, maybe QWERTY's specific case didn't break Nika's code, right? But maybe there is something that broke it, right? Maybe he did catch on to something and he just wasn't able to exploit it correctly. And I think a lot of them are going to want to look at Nika's code and see what's going on. The other side of that possibly is maybe that shows that QWERTY himself actually, missed something with the problem that he thought there was a mistake and there wasn't, right? So I think kind of when you do get one of those negative challenge, a successful defensive, it says something interesting about both of the two competitors. And if you're someone like Umnik, who's right on the bubble here, that's going to make you start thinking about whether this is the right time to make a move.
So yeah, that could mean QWERTY is vulnerable. So
Very, very possible.
Yeah, if only we could see what Umnik is looking at. We do see Nika right now looking at BCIP's.
All right, here we go. Get into the 500-point problem. This is what I was interested in.
Now he wants to tackle Tourist.
Yeah, it looks like people jumped into the 250s first. Maybe they had some ideas about cases that they wanted to check for to make sure everybody had. Now that we're getting into the second half of this challenge phase, I think these two 500s are really, really going to come under scrutiny. We'll see if they make it. I think both Taurus and Katanich submitted pretty comfortably before the end of the coding phase. It didn't look like they were rushed into a submission.
Okay.
So I want to say that they feel confident in their own solutions. Obviously, that the door is still wide open for some mistakes.
So you actually wouldn't believe it, but we did just switch between Nika and Katanich's feed. They're both looking at Tourist's 500-point problem.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And if there is an issue, if there is something worth challenging, we may see a speed race as to who can figure out what kind of test case is going to make it, is going to break it.
Interesting.
All right, let's check in on QWERTY, see what he's going after right now.
And just as a review of the 500-point question, essentially what's going on there is that there's a list that they're given of college classes, and each of the classes have a certain value to it. And in order to complete the class, some of them have prerequisites. So you have to complete a certain class or a certain number of classes before you can complete that one. And then you also have to keep in mind these values of the classes as well. So how do you, code this in such a way that you find the most optimal class schedule, I guess you could say, or class path?
All right. A lot of activity in the Twitch chat right now. So looks like Red Blue Green RBG commenting that Piotr, who's running a competing stream with us, but was kind enough to run that by us first, and being the long-term cop coder competitor that he is, I couldn't say no to that. He's just such a great guy. So Piotr is also looking at Taurus 500 points.
Yeah, and I'm sure
right
they're
now,
excited to see
issues.
what's happening, too, whether or not these are going to pass, what's going to happen in the challenge phase. Nothing else yet, but I would think that QWERTY might want to start making another move, or Umnik as well. I think if you're BCIP, if you're Katanich, you probably want to just sit pretty.
Yeah.
Hope that you hang on to your points, and that's that. If you're Umnik in fourth place, that's a whole different story. And,
right, QWERTY in a position where he really does need to make a move, and even a single successful challenge wouldn't get him up there. It wouldn't do the trick. He'd have to take down BCIP and Umnik to make that sort of move after the failed challenge early on in the round. So
yeah, definitely. And Umnik, I should mention, is actually the second highest rated out of the 6 competing here.
Oh, really?
Taurus is the first, obviously, and Umnik is the second. So this would be a pretty big upset if he does not make it into the finals tomorrow afternoon.
Interesting. All right, looks like you'll be hearing my voice in 15 seconds. Over the loudspeakers, letting everyone know that there are 2 minutes remaining in the challenge phase.
So Taurus currently looking at Katanich's 500-point problem, which seems to be going through a lot of scrutiny, but no one finding a big enough vulnerability to go after it yet.
Or not confident enough to do it. That could be a thing too.
2 minutes remaining. We have to wonder if we're going to see that change. Let's check in on BCIP now. Doesn't even have a problem open.
Standing. I think he's satisfied in his current position. Doesn't think anyone's going to make a move.
Yeah, speaking of did we speak too soon? No? All right, speaking of the positions, as BCIP opens Umnik's 250-point problem, we'll take another quick look at the leaderboard right here. The challenge phase so far has only contained one challenge. It was a failed challenge by QWERTY on Nika. Nika defended successfully against that.
Now it seems as though if this stays true, and if we assume that the 250-point challenge is ironclad for all members, it looks like at this point we would only have. Would Umnek have a chance if any of the tourists or Ikatanich fail the system test?
Yeah, it depends very much on which problems. You know, either one, for example, could fail both problems. They could end up with a zero.
That's
right?
true too.
And that would put them very
Ikatanich failing the
solid.
250 would
Exactly.
would move Umnek into
So that one,
position.
that's one that's interesting, is that Katanich's 500 is actually worth less than his 250 because it took him the entire almost 70, 80 minutes to do it. And what could happen if we see his 250 fail is that he may pass his 500 and still not have enough compared to other people's 250 point.
As we enter the final 20
30 seconds
seconds
left.
of the challenge phase,
If
we will
Umnek
keep
and Cordy
an
want to
eye.
make a move, it's going to have to be now.
Yeah, so we're going to keep the scoreboard up so we can see in real time if a challenge does come in. If we try and hunt it down on their screens, we're likely to miss it. This is the best place to see if and when it does happen. 5 seconds left. I'm going to guess we're not going to see a challenge.
No.
All right.
All right.
The challenge phase has completed. A little less eventful than last night's challenge.
Yep, it looks like nothing has failed on the challenge phase. That may be because the samples that were given were stronger, right? And they covered more of the cases. I think it looks like the 250s are mostly safe. It would be pretty surprising to see one of them fail or any of them fail. The 500s are still very much in question, I think. Whether or not that's going to make the difference in the score, but obviously depends on what exact problems end up coming through.
So that actually is, it's so important to code that first problem really quickly, I would assume, too, because even if you do fail that 500, you're still in great position if your first problem is solved.
Yeah, and especially here with we've had some really, really hard mediums at the finals, right? Sometimes it's the case that you have a 500-point problem that almost everybody gets, right? And then all of a sudden the 250 is the one that doesn't matter because it's like you've done that, you've moved on, and really kind of the 500 is going to be the decider, or the 1000. So far, it looks like it's been very, very tough 500 and 1,000 point problems, which is why the speed on the 250 is making so much of a difference.
Very cool. So we are now going to be waiting for the results.
Yeah,
it's running
hurry
through
up
the
and
system
wait.
test right now.
Yes.
All the contestants are standing.
It shouldn't take too long, so in just a moment, Nick will have to run away from us
for a
and jump
second.
on the stage to get ready for the announcement. We will bring the video feed of the scoreboard and how system testing went. Scott will be sticking with us. He's a little distracted right now, I think.
Oh yeah, I think he
He's
wants
got fellow competitors.
Yeah.
All the
If you want to bounce
contestants
for a
are
second
standing
to
up
go
there
say
talking.
hello, that's totally okay.
Yeah,
you
go
just
ahead
have to
and
come
do
back
that.
for the announcement.
All right, everyone, put some hearts. Give some love to Scott Wu. Tell him he did such a great job.
No,
on
he's
this
gonna come
feed.
back. He's gonna come
He'll
back.
come back.
by
He'll come
reviewing
back.
the
But
scores.
I still want to see all those hearts, though. So
Oh, yeah.
gotta love it.
I want to see what the
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
deserves it.
Come back. Come
All
back.
right,
I'll be
we'll
back
see you in
in
a couple minutes,
Sure.
Scott.
You can come replace me.
All right.
All right. What a round. What a round. Not as
And what
exciting.
great commentary.
Yeah.
Scott really is.
All right. Well, have fun on the stream because
All
I'm
right.
being summoned.
Oh, cool. All right, it's announcing time. Let's go and cut to the camera here. You can see, whoa, close up of the face there. Hey, can you go turn that camera? Give me the stage shot. Cool. We are doing a little behind the scenes stuff here. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, give me the stage. There we go. Maybe clear some space. All right. Sorry, everyone watching along. We're just getting that shot of the stage right now, getting a little help, grabbing passersby. That's how we do things around here. So Nick will be going on stage in just a moment to announce the winners. We'll have the video feed and commentary from Scott when he returns to us in just a moment. Taking a quick look over at the chat. Everyone loves Scott Wu. Aniket, this is not at SUNY Buffalo. This is at the BNMC Dig Innovation Center. The BNMC is Buffalo Niagara Medical Center. They're our sponsor this year. They've given us this excellent space that you can see right now, and that's where the competition's taking place currently. Lots of love for Scott. See lots of hearts. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you everyone for tuning in, staying active in the chat. We do follow that throughout the entire broadcast. We want to answer your questions. We want to show you whatever it is you want to see. Hopefully you have noticed the increased amount of screens that we're able to share this year. It was a big effort to get that to happen, and we're really pleased that we can show what everyone's doing in real time here. So yes, we'll keep on the stage and show the floor while we wait for the algorithm contest to come in and for Nick to join us. I'm going to bring in some additional audio, get the microphone so we can hear Nick as he makes the announcements. Yes, and red, blue, green, RBG, I agree. Scott, it would be great if Scott could come back for commentary, but I am thrilled for him that he's competing in the finals this year. You're going to have to slum it with me and Nick this time around. So let's see how the results go here. Maybe we can dig up someone who can bring some better commentary than us. We'll do the best we can, though. Any moment now, we will have the results coming in. You can see Scott hanging out over there. I thought he might come back, but I think he's in the zone right now. I'm really excited to see who he'll be competing with tomorrow. And again, thank you very much for the compliment. I do appreciate that. We'll see if I still have voice at the end of the finals tomorrow. Let me grab my video feed here. Transitioning over, this is the scoreboard where we will show the results of system testing. So Nick Castillo approaching the stage any second. I think Scott might be on his way back to bail me out because I'm running out of things to monologue about. Scott has rejoined me. Scott, what do you have any good insight from
Attention,
the,
please. The algorithm competition system testing has completed.
To Katanich,
Turn your attention to the
I
scoreboard
think
display to view the final
he's
results
pretty
of
confident
the
that it's going to
competition
pass.
All right, here we go. Here we
looking
go.
like
The
it's
final
Torres and Katanich are
semi-final
gonna be
round
safe.
has
Here
completed.
we go.
Gather around. Let's get everyone going. All right, everyone
So
paying attention.
we're going to be revealing the
right,
results
let's
of
see
these
the
submissions
results.
from the bottom to the top.
one by one?
Each coder, whether they correctly or incorrectly solved each of the problems. We're going to be starting with Nika.
All right.
All right, start with
goes.
Nika.
All right. Applause coming in for Nika.
Yeah.
as his
Nika passes the
250.
250, gets himself on the board.
Here we go with QWERTY.
QWERTY's good as well.
QWERTY locked in 155 points.
Now we're going to get to the bubble.
This could be big for Nick. Solid submission.
Nick
to the
is
250.
in. He's still going to need one of the people above to fail to make it up to the top three. 3 people are moving on to the finals tomorrow.
All right, BCIP. Lots of success so far.
All right, here are some of the big ones.
Now it
2
gets
submissions for each of
interesting.
them. Wow,
Ah,
Katanich passes
nice
both
Katanich
problems.
has secured a
Katanich
place
has
the
locked in
final.
his spot. And so has
So has
Gennady.
Taurus. System testing. Very uneventful
Yeah.
as everyone puts
Looks
in
like all
great
6
submissions,
contestants knew
great
what they were doing with the
solutions.
problems. So we're gonna see Katanich, we're gonna see BCIP, and we're gonna see Taurus in the final
right.
tomorrow,
We're
along
all
with the 3
in-
finalists from
yes,
yesterday.
the 3 finalists, including Scott Wu sitting with us, defending champion RNG58, and XUDYH, who had the best performance in the round yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. So far, some very hard problems on both semifinals. The 250s seemed doable. The 500s had a lot of complexities. Tomorrow in the final, things could be similar, or things could be totally different.
Back to the studio shot. Nick's rejoining us just now, leaving his stage duty.
All right, so it looks like everyone passed.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't say that part was exciting, but I'm glad to see who's going to be in the finals tomorrow. It's going to be very fun to watch.
We have the list.
We will be here. Look at that. This is the official list, handwritten,
There you go.
behind the scenes stuff right there. All right. So,
Just like the Emmys.
Scott, do you have anything else you want to share with the audience before we sign off?
Yeah, great job, I think, by all of the contestants. They all got themselves out on the board, and they all showed what they can do. It looks like Taurus and Katanich did especially well that they were able to get the 500, which I think is a very, very tricky problem. So congratulations to the top 3 finalists.
Yeah.
for tomorrow.
All right. So with that, I think we're going to sign off. One last question coming from Snow Everywhere in the chat. Scott, did you know how to solve the 500?
Yeah, so I talked about it actually with X-Ray, with Igor. I think that we have the right solution. Essentially, it involves network flow. So the idea is that if you're making progress, from one point to another in your classes, think about everything that's outside of that, right? And so there's a beginning before you start the progress loop, and there's an end after you finish. And it turns out that you can set that up in a way that if you flip the problem and you say, instead of maximizing the middle, you minimize the outside. You can set it up in a way that you can find the sums, and it ends up being a network flow with the right setup.
All right, excellent. Scott, while you were off catching up with the rest of the competitors over there, there was a huge amount of love that flowed in for you. Lots of compliments.
That's great to hear.
So thank you so much for joining us. You are the best. Can't wait to
Thank
see
you guys. Thank you guys.
on set at some point next year.
Yeah, I would love to say
been
that
a
we were
lot
going
of
to see
fun.
him tomorrow, but
No, I want him to go
but
and
he's
going
going
to
to be
best.
Yep.
We will be
Up there.
following along with Scott's progress as well as the remaining 5 competitors in the finals tomorrow, right before the awards ceremony. The system testing results will be revealed during that ceremony tomorrow. Please check out the broadcast schedule on TCO17.topcoder.com, as well as on our Twitch channel.
All right.
And I think that's it.
Yep.
I need to go
Sounds
drink
good.
some water. Man,
Sounds
that's
good.
Yeah, you
Thanks
that's
for
it.
watching, guys.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
Thank you,
thanks again,
everybody.
Scott.
Yep.
Thank
Well
you,
done.
Scott. Scott is the
It's been an honor.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll catch you later tonight for development and UI prototype.